For each ascendant and for each moon sign, there is a specific life path, which is why a person is born under those ascendants and moon signs. This life path will work regardless of the planetary positions, or more precisely, it is the blueprints which can be altered by the planetary positions, but not changed entirely. So, these blueprints can be used to predict. In fact, you can do an entire reading for a person based solely on the position of the ascendant or of the moon. And this reading will be 70% accurate regardless of what the planetary positions are in a person's chart. In fact, if you know your ascendant or your moon sign, then I'll give you a reading right now. Now, if the sign in question is your ascendant, then the reading will be about what is actually going on in your life, how your life looks, and how it unfolds. If it's the moon sign, then we're talking about how you yourself view your life and everything in it, but not necessarily how others perceive it. Those who have a Gemini ascendant or moon sign are usually very friendly to others. Their life seems to be quite dualistic in the way it unfolds. And the reason for that is simple. They are often drawn into two different paths because they are quite dualistic in nature. They have a very hard time making decisions because of this, because they are like two different people in one body. In terms of the physical appearance, they tend to be either average or taller than average in height, and they tend to be quite lean and rather athletic in their build. They are very swift and are great at sports, at least most of the time. One weakness of Gemini ascendant natives is that they are often all talk and no action because they are very much in their own minds. They are not very practical people in terms of implementing whatever they're thinking about. And that again is part of their indecisiveness. So when it comes to taking action, these are not the best people at it. Gemini natives tend to be born into a very caring and warm family, and their formative years, their childhood, is usually very comfortable and nurturing, and one might even say that they get spoiled during this time. When it comes to their friend circle, they usually feel as if it is part of their identity, and they are very, very proud of who they hang out with and the bonds they create with others. They also like to show off their accomplishments, their handiwork, or their hobbies, with both being a great source of pride whenever they achieve anything practical. They are also natural businessmen and tend to be very effective at running their own business, which often turns into a quite successful enterprise. The relationship with the father also tends to be quite friendly, and the father is seen more as a close friend rather than a senior figure. Even their bosses, if they are in a career path, tend to be more friendly than actually in charge of them. They tend to see each other as equals or as friends rather than purely co-workers. When it comes to the home, they tend to have a rather minimalistic dwelling, often very clean and very tidy, but not very comfortable, not very warm and welcoming. They also have a very stern and demanding mother in most cases, one that is rather strict with them and treats them as if they are unworthy somehow or not good enough. They also tend to worry too much about everything that's going on around them. They have a very hard time relaxing because of it and are quite panic prone and pessimistic in their approach because of this. In fact, one might say that they look for problems to solve whenever they don't have one going on right now in their life. When it comes to their education, they prefer areas like trade, politics, commerce, etc. Everything that has to do with diplomacy and people is their cup of tea, one might say. When it comes to children, they are often treated as equals because Gemini natives tend to see themselves as a kind of a grown child in many cases, and they are quite playful, so the interaction with the children is mostly fun and quite enjoyable to both parties. When it comes to responsibilities, that's a huge weak point for Gemini natives. As mentioned before, they often see themselves as grown children, not as adults, so they tend to feel very depressed when it comes to actual responsibilities, and they don't handle them well. They get stressed easily when they need to handle the reality of life or the less pleasant sides of it. Diseases too tend to be quite a problem for Gemini natives, as their immune system often fails them when it is needed the most. On the plus side, whatever comes easily is also easily gone, so their diseases tend to be rather violent but quite short-term problems and not something that they need to handle for a prolonged period of time. The same goes for deaths if they incur any, as these tend to be quite sudden and they appear because of some unfortunate event or accident, and they are again easily disposed of, not something that takes them a long time to deal with. It should be noted, however, that Gemini natives are very accident prone and also lack the insight into other people's motives in certain cases. So when it comes to backstabbing, it's a regular occurrence for them. They are very prone to that sort of behavior from others. When it comes to relationships, it tends to be more like a teacher-student interaction instead of a normal husband and wife arrangement. The spouse tends to be very mature, very understanding, but very strong in their opinions and beliefs. Not someone who changes their minds easily like the Gemini natives themselves. Gemini natives are also very careful about contracts and are very strict about them. They never break their promise, and that's a good thing when it comes to business because they're very trustworthy as individuals. They also attract business partners that are more along the lines of professionals rather than purely businessmen, because the businessman in that equation is the Gemini native, so they get the expertise from others. Gemini natives are great at keeping secrets and information that they receive from others. They're not the ones that will run and tell their friends that they slept with someone, quite the opposite. They are usually far less promiscuous than they seem. This might be quite confusing to those who look at their behavior, but in fact, again, when it comes to their private life, it's much stricter and much more restrained than one might imagine. When it comes to their worldview and beliefs, Gemini natives tend to be very open-minded and very accepting of other people's opinions and views, sometimes to the point of being too accepting and prone to believe in rather bizarre theories and doctrines. They are the ones to jump into new religions and experience new methods of worship or new ideas. They can also be very scientific in their approach, but experiment with drugs to alter their state of consciousness, for example. This is not to say that they tend to be drug addicts, quite the opposite, but it is something that they might try just to have the experience. When it comes to their careers, Gemini natives are very unstable in this regard, so most of them are not good at holding a job and are much better off at commerce and business, being independent contractors or the owners of the company rather than the employees. When I do get a certain job, it might be something that requires a lot of travel and a lot of communications with others. So they might be translators, flight attendants, or anyone else who needs to travel a lot to speak to others and to represent someone else. They can also be great ambassadors, diplomats, etc., as when it comes to politics, they are extremely good at it. They are not, however, the ones to run for a high office like the presidency or being a prime minister. They are the ones that prefer to be behind the scenes, or rather, the presenters, not the headmen. They don't like the responsibility of being on top of the pyramid and much prefer to represent the pyramid to someone else. The same way a spokesperson represents a company but doesn't run it. When it comes to their social circle, Gemini ascendants are surprisingly competitive in terms of how they interact with others in this sphere. In fact, unlike the relationship with the close friends, the neighbors, and the siblings, when it comes to people they are merely acquainted with, they tend to be quite cold and even aggressive towards them if those don't seem to be friendly towards the Gemini native themselves. They are, however, quite ambitious when it comes to achieving their goals, even though these goals don't include being on top of the pyramid, as mentioned before. If they need to create a company or if they need to learn something new, there is very little that can stop them. They are quite obsessive when it comes to achieving whatever they desire. Gemini natives tend to be quite frugal in their spending, which is something you wouldn't expect from someone who normally is rather childish in their behavior. And this helps them accumulate wealth rather easily, because again, the spending is controlled. They are also not prone to addictions, drug use, etc. They are very resistant towards them. They do, however, like luxury products and the finer things in life, such as designer clothing or high end jewelry. Now, this might seem contradictory to what was said before, but in fact, when you look at the value of the things that they do purchase, it doesn't tend to decrease. So it's more like an investment rather than merely spending money on something beautiful. They can also spend a lot on their family because they tend to believe that this is, again, an investment rather than merely throwing money away. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that the family will ever return the money spent. Now for some general predictions. At the age of 16 to 18, they tend to get into a rather serious relationship, which will definitely define them for the rest of their lives. And usually they also tend to get a job that will usher in the beginning of their career path. This is also the time when they can change residence or move abroad. Around the age of 21 or 22, they tend to meet new friends and also at least attempt to start their own business. Otherwise, it might be a new hobby, or they can also be performers and get a very lucrative gig that will make them more famous than they were before. Around the ages of 22 to 24, they tend to earn quite a bit of money on the one hand, and in certain cases they might even get a property or a new home. The mother might also get a promotion or a pay raise during this time that will significantly improve her financial position. Around the ages of 24 to 26, Gemini natives might enroll in some form of higher education as well as start their own business. They might also make some sort of investment during this time or buy some property that will be very expensive on the one hand but very lucrative on the other. Around the age of 28 to 30, they should be very careful with their health and with any legal issues that they might encounter. They also should be very careful with their co-workers because one of them might betray them. On the plus side, if they do encounter a legal struggle or a serious disease, they will emerge victorious. In addition, this is the time when they can realize a lifelong ambition of some sorts or change something about their appearance. This might also be the time when they decide to do a plastic surgery or some other significant change in how they look. Around the age of 32 to 35, there tends to be a change of residence and a change of lifestyle, as this is the time when Gemini natives come to their own and finally achieve something in life that is what they have strived for during the previous years. Around the age of 35 to 38, there might be a trip abroad that will significantly change their worldview, or they might get involved in religion or some organization that will be very influential in terms of how they think and how they see others. They might also get involved in some environmental group or some humanitarian organization. The same can also be expected around the age of 42 to 45, and this is also a time when they can publish something that they wrote or a music piece that they produced, etc. Something that comes directly from them and needs to be published through an organized channel. They might also open their own website during this time. Around the age of 47, they should be very careful with their health, and also they should be aware that they can enter some sort of legal battle during this period that can be very detrimental for them. This is also a time when they can get into debt, so they should be very careful with their finances. If they wish to adopt a dog at this point, on the other hand, then this is the perfect time to do so. If you want to learn more, please visit my website. And if you want to get a personal reading with far more details about yourself, then you are welcome to contact me on my Facebook page. You will find the links below. Thank you and good luck.